Welcome to the adventures of the monad. The range of monads that dwell in the emotional world was mentioned in a previous presentation. Enumerating and describing every kind of emotional entity would be a task as formidable as enumerating and describing every physical species found on Earth. We can attempt to tabulate the chief classes and briefly describe each. The column titled Physically Dead refers to entities that have cast off their etheric envelopes and have returned to the emotional world or are in the emotional world before they return to Earth. In the green-headed column, you have the non-human entities. The existence of the emotional bodies of animals is something that will please many animal lovers. However, animals belong to group souls. Through exceptional devotion to humans, some domesticated animals begin to draw around themselves their own emotional envelopes and may remain distinct from their group soul so they can be contacted by their carers. The animal kingdom is guided by a dedicated class of devas. Nature spirits are from the devic stream and represent a level of evolution akin to those of animals. The last column is the most interesting and problematic of all. The elementals formed unconsciously are the pollution we spew into this world daily, millennia after millennia. This is the garbage we have to clean up one day, and boy, do we have a big job on our hands. The elementals formed consciously could refer to a temporary or long-standing creation, which is reinforced by the continual focus of an individual or a group. These become egregores and can serve helpful as well as harmful purposes. Artificial humans are figments of our own imagination. We are likely to concoct this individual if we expect, for example, Jesus to have blonde hair and blue eyes. If enough of us believe in this entity, it will appear just like Elmo in Times Square to greet us as we arrive at our Christian concept of paradise. To present a complete classification of entities that could appear on the emotional plane, we must acknowledge that very high adepts from other planets of our solar system and even more august visitors from a still greater distance occasionally appear. Although possible, it is almost inconceivable that such beings would manifest themselves on a plane as low as the emotional. If they wish to do so, they would create a temporary body of emotional matter gathered from this planet. Other monadic streams of life are evolving on this planet. As a rule, there has not been direct contact between these streams and our own. This is not an absolute statement, as we do know of beings recorded in our myths such as fairies, trolls, gnomes, sylphs, leprechauns, satyrs, and fauns. If we did contact them, it would be on the physical plane, as their connection with our emotional plane would be very slight. The only possibility of their appearance depends upon a highly improbable accident in ceremonial magic, which only a few of the most advanced sorcerers know how to perform. Nevertheless, this has happened at least once. Let us now go through the class of beings found in the emotional world and describe them in greater detail. We start with humans, who are A. physically alive. They transit in and out of this world, but are still incarnate in a physical body, which they return to at the end of each visit. 1. The average person. This class consists of people whose physical bodies are asleep and who float about on the emotional plane in various degrees of consciousness. We have already described this group when we discussed our sleep life. Some people are objectively conscious on this plane, while others are in a dreamlike state. The critical thing to remember is that they are there. We all potentially have objective access to the emotional world. However, most do not remember it when we return to our bodies. 2. The psychic. A psychically developed person is usually objectively conscious when out of the physical body. However, due to a lack of proper training, they are liable to be deceived by what they see. Often, they may be able to range through most of the emotional subplanes, but sometimes they are especially attracted to one subplane and rarely travel beyond its influences. Their recollection of what they have seen may vary from perfect clearness to utter distortion or black oblivion. As these individuals are assumed not to be under the guidance of a master, they will always appear in their emotional bodies, since they do not know how to function in their mental vehicle. Why? To function objectively in the mental world, you must focus your monad in the 47-4 permanent molecule. This does not happen until the monad has passed the I2 and left its home in the 48-1 permanent atom. This permanent atom is the home for most of humanity, which is why the emotional world is such a big deal to us. 3. The adept and their pupils. This class usually functions through their mental body, not their emotional body. The mental body comprises matter of the 4 lower levels of the mental plane, 47, 4 to 7. The advantage of using this vehicle is that it permits instant passage from the mental plane to the emotional plane and back. It also allows the use of the greater power and keener sense of its own plane at all times. The mental envelope, which is not visible to emotional sight, allows the pupil who works in it to learn how to gather around themselves a temporary veil of emotional matter when they wish to become perceptible to emotional entities. Such a vehicle, though an exact reproduction of the person in appearance, contains none of the matter of their own emotional body, but corresponds to it in the same way a materialization corresponds to a physical body. I wonder if this is the technique used by our spirit guides. The presumption is that all who talk of such entities are wise companions who appear at our side when we enter the emotional world and help us orientate ourselves within it. What concerns me was why another soul, if they were wise, would subject themselves to the depravity of existing on the emotional world full time. It makes more sense if they could flip back and forth materializing an emotional envelope when they needed it. More on this possibly in a later presentation. At an earlier stage of their development, the pupil may be found functioning in their emotional body like anyone else, but whichever vehicle they were employing, a pupil under instruction from a competent teacher is always fully conscious and can function efficiently under all the molecular subplanes, not the primary atomic plane 48-1, but all the subplanes 48-2 to 7. The black magician and their pupils. This class corresponds to a certain degree to that of the adept and their pupil, except that the development has been for evil instead of good. The powers acquired are being used for selfish instead of for altruistic purposes. The designation of black magician has to be clarified. What would be classified as a genuine black magician is a monad who has severed their link with their solar deva. Consequently, they cannot incarnate again. So an earthbound black magician is just someone who has knowledge of the dark arts. They are not one of these fearsome Atlantean Dark Lords. The Dark Lords are not as powerful as an adept, who can incarnate if they choose to do so. An initiate has access to more power than a disciple of the Atlantean Dark Lords. However, followers of the left-hand path can use material forces that would not be countenanced by a white magician. This places the white magician at a disadvantage, which is why the practitioners of the dark arts are such a formidable force on earth. Among its lower ranks are those who practice the rites of the Obe and Voodoo schools and the shamans found in indigenous populations. Higher in intellect and therefore more blameworthy are the Tibetan black magicians. This is a particular class of black magicians who have been significant instigators of disharmony on this planet. So the story goes, there is a unique lodge of extremely advanced disciples under an adept's guidance, a 45 self. They reside in Tibet. So Blavatsky made a pilgrimage to Tibet. I would not be surprised if it is DK that runs this monastery. They are supposed to be housed at the top of some mountain. Apparently, the other monastery housing these nefarious black magicians is at the bottom of the mountain. The bad is always found next to the good. They are locked in a constant battle. It is we who give each group their ammunition. Whose side are you on? You would naturally say, on the side of good, of course. But is that always true? Every time you have a negative emotion or venomous thought, you feed into the power supply of these destructive individuals. It is a scary thought. A negative thought on the physical plane is a murder on the mental plane. Ponder that. In the following presentation, we will finish off our look at the classes of beings found in the emotional world, starting with humans again. But this time, they are dead in the physical world. Thank you.